Good. Well, welcome everybody. It's Janice at KW Portfolio, and thanks for tuning in live. And for those that are watching on the replay, we're going to have a good session today. And I think our guest has some slides that she's going to go through. And then if you have any questions, just type them in or unmute yourself. I'll watch the chat group and I'll read them out. And without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor to our guest, Milan Swanston. Graciously took her time out of her day to share some of her knowledge with us. So I'll let you do your own introduction to kind of give people a background on what's going on. So I'll pass on to you, Milan.
Thank you for having me. I guess it's first I'm presenting to agents, so this is a bit of a different type of thing. Usually I'm talking to clients, but I'm realizing from having worked at a few brokerages that pre-construction is its own beast. It's a completely different niche market than regular real estate. In fact, because I started there, I mean, the first time I tried to do resale, I realized 2 years and I didn't even know how to open a lockbox. It's such a completely different animal. So I wanted to just come on and share some of what we do with pre-construction, because I know a lot of agents have questions about it. And if we can help, we're always happy to help. So I guess, first of all, let's talk a little bit about myself. I've been in this for a really long time. So I've been doing pre-construction since 2005, back when we were at $400 a square foot and everybody thought the sky was falling at $400 a square foot. So I started out, actually got my license, started working for Milbourne and working for the builders. So I think I started out with Monarch, and over my time with Milbourne and Baker and a few others, I sold a lot of really key projects in Toronto. Again, working in the sales office. So I sold one Bloor was one I did, L Tower, M5V, Quay West. They blur in my head now. I launched the Canary District. I sold Carnaby for streetcar. I kind of went in and out over the course of about a decade. While I was doing that, I got a chance to meet a lot of the major players behind the scenes, which has been extremely helpful, make a lot of connections. And I started doing resale as well, which is something that very few people in pre-construction do. So I started taking on all kinds of different resale deals, and I went back and forth from being on site to I was at Bosley for a while and went back. But what it evolved into is Condo Savvy. And Condo Savvy was my way of kind of creating a bit of a one-stop shop. And what I mean by that is pre-construction, your clients can walk in off the street and buy a condo, but there's a bit of an art to it, and there's a lot, and more now even than it was 15 years ago. It's a lot about who you know, what you know, when you get in. And I just want to be able to help clients navigate that. And at this stage, I've actually worked helping a lot of agents who have their own strong resale practices, who don't want to take the time out to learn an entirely different market, and I'm helping them as well. So yeah, Condo Savvy was hatched maybe in terms of a brand maybe 4 years ago, and it's been fantastic. Basically what we do is walk people through picking the projects all the way to helping them pick units. I'll get more into that in a bit, but I just want to go over some of the questions I get asked most often about pre-construction. Why would somebody buy pre-construction? And I'm sure there's all kinds of, you hear a lot of pros, you hear a lot of cons, and there's probably truth in all of it. I guess, so one of the big things, most of the people who buy pre-construction are investors. Most of my database who buys pre-con is investors. Not all, but most of them are. And even those who aren't primarily investors, it's still a big part of it. The idea is something, and I didn't realize this was unique, I don't know, just to Canada, but I know this isn't a given, is you basically wind up putting down 20% on a property. You don't have to get a mortgage till closing, and you ride it till closing. So for every dollar your property goes up, you're getting a benefit of 5 on your actual investment. So most people who buy pre-construction are investors. Even if they do want to live there, the whole idea is you're buying at a point that where you're thinking 5 years from now, you're going to have made quite a bit of money. To that, same thing as equity appreciation. When the property's done, if you bought a condo today that was 2 years old, in 5 years, it'll be a 7-year-old condo and getting dated, because in Toronto world, we're very used to the latest and greatest in terms of amenities, etc. The newest property is always most in demand. It's always worth the most in rental and for resale. So again, what you're doing is you're buying something, you're going to sit tight for 5 years or so, for 3 to 5, depending on how it goes. And you're going to have the hottest address in town. So that was something else. Customization. This is something that's more specific for end users. Short of actually buying a plot of land, this is as close as you can get to a custom home. So just across the board, you can be able to choose your floors and your cabinets and your doorknobs, and you also have the option to upgrade and sometimes even customize your floor plan. So that's a nice aspect as opposed to buying something that's already done. It's a hands-off investment. And what I mean by that is you buy other types of properties, which I'm not against. We do that. We do laneway and we do a bunch of other stuff. But this is definitely the most hands-off. You go into a shiny sales office, you write a series of checks, they cash them, you sit tight, you go fishing, you come back in 5 years. You have keys to a brand new building, unit that's completely under warranty. And essentially, you don't have to worry about plumbing or windows because all of that's part of the condo. Especially in a new condo, there's very little you need to take care of, even in terms of addressing your tenants. It's a brand new, drama-free, easy type of investment, as opposed to a triplex or a laneway or anything else where you have tenants immediately, and obviously you're going to have to be fixing, maintaining the property and things of that nature. Another one, and this applies to investors as well as end users, and by end users, usually those are empty nesters thinking about downsizing or people buying for their kids. And the idea is if you have a client who's not quite ready for a condo, either because they're not ready to leave their house yet, or because say it's for a kid and the kid's still in school, and you are thinking 3-4 years out, you can buy something, lock it into today's pricing, put 20% down on it, and not have to get a mortgage until they're ready. So if somebody wants to get in, knows what's happening, but doesn't necessarily want to liquidate or get a mortgage, this is an option I think that works for that niche quite well. And on top of that, there's an extended deposit structure. So as opposed to having to come up with 20% up front, generally speaking, they give you a year to 2 years in 5% installments to actually be able to save if you're buying a home, for example, to save your down payment. So you don't have to come with a full throw right away. So those are some of the biggies in terms of why people do it. And again, this one I get asked a lot, how does it usually work? So deposit structures range by project, but generally speaking, you're going to want 20%. They're going to want 20% down by closing. Now that could be spread out in any number of ways. We just did one last week that's excellent. It's only 5% per year until closing. So I think 5% this year, 5% next year, 5% the year after that, and nothing else till 2024. So as an investment, fantastic leverage. This is typical. Just an idea of what you might be looking at. It's usually $5,000 to $10,000 with signing. You'll pay the balance to 5% in a month. You'll usually pay another 5% in maybe 4 months. Again, this is typical, but could be all over the place. 5% maybe 9 months, and then maybe 5% in a year and a half. That would be a very common type of deposit structure. If you are buying as an investment, you're going to be required the bank will require you to have 20% down minimum to get a mortgage anyways. It just is a nice way to stagger it out. So that's something I get asked about quite a bit. Stages of pre-construction. So I'm going to get into this a little bit later, but people ask why use an agent, what's with the platinum brokers, I'm going to get that. But to understand that, you need to understand a little bit about how pre-construction is sold. Now, this is a little dated because the market has been so hot for the last couple of years that we don't necessarily even get to 3, 4, or 5, but this is more or less how it launches. The very first units will be sold to direct friends and families of the developer. Unless you know some, you really can't get into that one. That'll be the first round, and they'll maybe sell maybe 10% of their units there. Next comes us, the platinum brokers. And what a platinum broker is a broker that tends to work specifically or tends to specialize in pre-construction, has a lot of relationships with builders, marketing companies, etc. And basically has they know what they're doing. So basically we get approached earlier before this launches. So we have a chance to kind of vet the project, market it to our database, and bring them in. So we get first kick at the can. In the last year or two, pretty much that's it. Usually the buildings, properties have been, or project, unless they actually hold back, have been sold entirely by platinum brokers. Now, if they don't, or they want to meter it out, it can go from there. So after the platinum brokers have taken theirs, there'll be a price increase, and they may open it to regular brokers. If there's anything left after that, they'll go to the pre-registrants through their own marketing. And if there's anything left after that, they'll have a big public opening, which is when your client could technically walk in off the street and just buy it for themselves. Like I said, the demand for pre-construction in the last 2 years has been, well, honestly, since I've been it, but it just accelerates all the time. And very unlikely these days that much happens after the platinum brokers kind of get through with it. And the big thing is this: if you do wait, each time it goes up, the prices go up, sometimes by $5,000, sometimes by $30,000, sometimes by $100,000, depending on how well they've done and how low the prices were to begin with. So timing is everything. The most money is generally made right from the beginning. Again, why to work with a platinum agent? So these are some of the perks that we get to offer our clients, and again, your clients. The biggest one, I think, is the first round access and pricing. So like I said, every time we go to another stage of marketing, the prices go up, and I guess the options go down, they get picked over. So by the time you get to a stage 3 or 4, you've had 2 or 3 price increases, and the units have been fairly well picked over. And so you're paying the most for the least desirable units. Going in platinum, going in early means you get the best prices and the best units. They also offer us exclusive promotions for our clients. They could be anything. It could be a free a trip somewhere, sometimes on a high-end project. Recently, they offered us a really great deposit, interest on the deposit money, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll get a bunch of those. They vary by project. Extended deposit structures is something that's nice. Again, the developer takes that 15 to 20% deposit. It's held in trust by their lawyers, basically to get their construction financing. But again, the longer you can keep your money in your own wallet, obviously, the better. So we tend to get longer, more spread out deposit structures for our clients. A free assignment clause. I could do a whole different thing just on assignment, but in a nutshell, it's good to have. The governments have changed things, so you pay taxes to the nose if you utilize it. But again, you do want to be able to assign your unit if you have to. We usually get a free assignment clause. Caps on levies. And this is, again, could be an entire conversation to itself. But levies, developmental charges and levies are something that have expanded exponentially in the 15 years I've been in pre-construction. It used to be just a couple $1,000s, and now you could be looking at $20,000, $25,000. Basically, those are the fees that the government, municipal governments, put on I guess improvements are going to make to the area for these new dwellers. So park levies, school levies, arts levies, things like that. Essentially, they're a tax, in my opinion, but basically they're passed to the developer, who then passes them on to the client. Now, or the purchaser. We want to cap it in case so we know what we're working with. So in other words, if the government adds 3 more between now and your closing 4 years from now, your clients don't get a big surprise. We know it cannot be more than a certain amount. So that's really important. Similar one, we try to get everybody's permission to rent during occupancy. Here's another thing. And again, it's so funny how many rabbit holes I can go down with this, but there are 2 closings in pre-construction. You have your interim closing, which is occupancy, which is when you get the keys to your unit. You start paying occupancy fees, but you don't actually own the property. That could be 3 months, that could be a year. One of the important things, especially as an investor, is to make sure that especially if you're on a lower floor, and this could extend for some time before final closing, when title actually transfers from the builder to the buyer, that you can actually get somebody to rent it, so you're not carrying it out of pocket. And again, the biggest thing is the money you save. I mean, you're buying, just the difference between buying with a platinum agent as opposed to buying 3 weeks later you could save yourself $50,000 easily. And that's not an exaggeration. The prices can go up significantly. So that's the main reason why it makes sense to work with a platinum agent.
Milan, we have a question.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on the difference between a platinum and a VIP broker?
Yes. You know what? It's semantics. Now, it used to be called VIP. And then they wanted to have another level of that, so they called it platinum. And now they have something, they have all kinds of extra ACE, and they have all kinds of things. So technically, if you're going to think platinum would come before VIP, but they're often used interchangeably, depending, because each builder, each marketing group has their own words for what they call their go-to group. But sometimes now what they're saying, some builders will say platinum, and they'll say, okay, you're a VIP, which basically means you're not a platinum. It's a semantics thing at this stage. If they're saying, look, there's a platinum opening and a VIP opening, that's just their way of saying, okay, the platinums are going to come and you'd be round two. Sometimes people still refer to platinums as VIP or platinum VIP. It's just the way there's no actual definition. Does that make sense?
Thank you. And so on that note, while we're talking about platinum brokers, another question, how, as agents, and non-platinum brokers, how do you work with the platinum brokers to get the best deals for clients and still earn commissions?
So that's actually a really, really good point. I have a lot of people coming into it now. It's there's not that many. I'd say there's different tiers even within platinum. Probably out of 50,000 agents in the city, there's maybe 70 or 80 of them that have platinum status. And again, you don't necessarily have platinum status at every project. The best way, if you're not doing this regularly, is to work with and refer to a platinum agent. Basically, we work with a broker who's not there. Basically, you refer us your clients and we give you 25%. So it's usually 4 points, which means you get one. And we just kind of put you in as one of our clients. We have a co-op deal, and that's the easiest way to do it. I think to be able to break into it on your own is very difficult. Like I said, if you don't already have these people on speed dial type of thing, there's so many people trying to get in that it's going to be very, very difficult to get your clients a good unit on your own. So yeah, that's basically what it is. If you can find a platinum agent that you can work with, refer your clients to, and let them take care of it, that's usually how it's done.
Milan, I have a question.
Yeah.
So there are agents that create their own websites for specific projects to make it look like they are working for the builder. So when you Google a project, they often come up before the builder does.
Almost always.
Yeah. So is that, would they be considered a platinum broker?
Anybody can put up a website. Doesn't mean they get you allocations.
Okay.
So anybody, you could do it yourself. You could put a website and get all the leads in the world, but could you actually service those leads? To be honest with you, it's a very small group. And getting up there, to be honest, you're on front page of Google means you're probably spending a lot of money. So it might get you one, but there's no guarantee, unfortunately.
So we were fortunate. We sold a unit at the Well for one of our clients.
Ooh, excellent.
Yeah. Probably just because it wasn't a higher price point. So I imagine there wasn't as many of the platinum brokers. So I have not sold a lot of pre-construction. Mm-hmm. And we were quite, fortunate. We were so lucky that we got a unit allocated. But does that make me a platinum broker if I'm on their mailing list, or not necessarily?
One unit doesn't usually do it. Usually you have to go 5 to 10 before you'll get in. But Tridel, so there's a whole bunch of different groups. So there's some major marketing companies. There's Baker, Milbourne International, etc. They have their own lists, and they handle launches for a lot of brokers. Tridel and Daniels are two developers that have their own lists. Mm-hmm. Having sold one with them, you certainly have a better chance going into the second one, but you wouldn't necessarily be. They have Tridel, especially as an example, has a list of brokers that they've been working with since the beginning of time.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of them do a lot of stuff in China. Tridel's really big in the Chinese community. So you would be on their radar, but you probably have to do a lot more volume before you get the first call.
Right. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, it's great.
Anything else? I've been kind of rattling on. Please stop and ask me questions at any point. Nothing? All right. How do I choose a project? Now, there's a bunch of different things. Some platinum brokers market all the projects. Some of them cherry pick. I do tend to cherry pick. My general rule of thumb is I don't want to promote a project that I wouldn't buy myself. My database has been primarily driven by referral and word of mouth. So I feel there's a sense of obligation. I want to try and take care of everybody. I want everybody to make as much money as possible. And because I'm coming from inside the project, I have a lot of opinions on what builders I like, what developers tend to do projects that hold their value long-term, et cetera, et cetera. So there's 5 basic things, and I put them in order of importance here, although the first 3 are pretty key. First one is the obvious one in real estate. Location is everything, especially with a condo, where you're not actually buying land, you're just literally buying a space in the sky. Location's everything. That would be the very first thing you look at, and you want to look at that real estate, we understand. I don't have to go into that anymore. A strong builder. This is incredibly important. In fact, it's so ingrained in me that even when I'm selling resale, I still go back to who the builder is. There's a huge difference between builders, their reputations. Some of them own their own construction arms, some of them don't, so they control quality. Some of them tend to build on time. Some of them are more ethical than others. Some of them have deeper pockets than others. What we look for is a strong builder with a strong track record of success. Ones who have had the lowest amount of complaints or on construction, things of that nature. Having a builder, I know so many people who just didn't know when someone went to a sales center and bought something, for example, by Urban Corp, or something like that. There's a lot of developers that I won't touch with a 10-foot pole. We won't go into even resale. I won't let people buy from certain developers. So having a builder, because you're going to give them their money. Your client has 10 days. And at that point, there's very little you can do. So a builder that's going to come through, deliver what they say they're going to deliver is huge. Value. Now, here's something that comes up quite a bit. A lot of people have the impression that pre-construction is cheaper than resale. That's not usually the case. In fact, it's usually a little bit more. It seems like less because when you go and you look at it 4 years later, it's like, oh my goodness, that was such a good deal. That it just looks like it that way. You're not getting mortgage until you have a lot of equity build up by the time you close, but it usually is at market or a little bit above market. And you're counting on the fact that you have, 4 or 5 years to catch up and have a brand new product. But when we look at value, we look at the value relative to the resale selling in the area. We also look at the value relative to other pre-construction options that are being offered to us. So those are the top 3 I look at always. They all have to be strong. Now there's 2 more that I add in there. Unique selling proposition. There's a lot of condos going up. There's a lot to choose from. Assuming the first 3 are strong, why pick one over another? And I say what's different? When you go to market this down the road, does it have direct subway access? Does it have, some unique amenities? Does it have a particular brand associated with it? Nobu, for example, is one that did really well because it had an international cachet. When you go to rent or resell that unit down the road, what makes this project more interesting than any of the other 100, 200, 300 projects or condos that you're going to be competing with? And leverage, and this goes just back to deposit structure again. I would say that we're seeing some right now. The pre-construction market pretty much stopped with COVID up until about 2 weeks ago. We had our first launch. Was it last weekend? I think it was last weekend. It's blurring together for me now. It sold out. It sold out at a relatively strong price, but one of the things they offered was a really, really good deposit structure. Like I said, it was 5% this year, 5% 2021, 5% 2022, and then 5% on closing. So when you can leverage it, when you look at your return on investment, the less you put down up front, to me, that becomes much more attractive as well. So when I'm looking at evaluating a program, those are my big 5.
So before you go on, so you hit a bit of a hot button there when we were talking about the quality of the builder. And
Yeah.
I know this is just your opinion,
Yeah.
but is there, you know, whether it's like published info or not, a list of maybe builders to avoid, or when, you know, like what's, I don't know if you want to publicly say anything, or is it public knowledge that, of builders that have had issues in the past, or, you know, late on their deliverables, anything like that?
Well, there's all kinds of, I think that I'd rather tell you my top builders. So top builders are my favorites, Great Gulf. They're amazing. Daniels is strong. Tridel is strong. Streetcar I've done really well with. In terms of lesser ones, I mean, I won't put that on record. Other than Urban Corp, which everybody, you know, that was in the news. They've been sued to smithereens, and they've been just unethical. But long before they were in the news, they were just kind of regarded as not the most ethical, really delayed closings, really delayed occupancies, et cetera, et cetera. So, and some of them come down to just my personal experience. Having worked with certain builders, I just like how some builders operate better than others. Like you want a builder who tends to deliver on time. Center Court, for example, has never had a day of occupancy in any of their projects. Because there's little different things you look at. But yeah, in terms of the bad ones, generally, if I haven't heard of them before, I tend to avoid them, only because it is a big investment, and the projects you see canceled usually are a smaller developer that didn't have the pockets to make it work.
You tend to stay away from builders that are like trying to crack into it for first time.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Okay.
It's gone to the point, it's a big boys game now. The stakes are high, and you'd hate to have a client who bought something and is all excited and you know, put up 20% and then finds out 2.5 years later, the project's not going to go ahead and they've been priced out of the market.
Right. And just who was the first builder that you mentioned, just to recap your favorites? Was it Tridel?
Oh, Great Gulf. I love Great Gulf.
Great Gulf, okay.
Anything they do, I'm all over it. They tend to have first of all, they own their own construction arm. They're one of the two that do, them and Tridel. They tend to do really well in the resale market. They tend to sell for a premium. They tend to be, in my opinion, a stronger design than Tridel. And then again, that's just my opinion. I do love how they do their common spaces, their interiors, their finishes, etc. So that is my go-to all the time. But again, project by project, then I look at, okay, this is what they're offering, but how much is it? And we kind of weigh it out that way. Make sense?
Yes, thanks.
All right, awesome. Okay, so this is something people ask me a lot as well. There's the idea, and again, it's funny out there. I think the media pushes it that it's all foreign investors. It's all foreign investors. It's all foreign investors. It's really not. Now, there may be a lot of foreign capital. I've worked on both sides of this as an agent. I've sold out many strong buildings where I was behind and saw every deal that came through. Very few times are we wiring money in from China or something like that. Now, there may be a lot of buyers who are Chinese, but they live locally in Toronto, they're residents, and the money may be coming from elsewhere. There's no way of governing that. But I will say that at least 90 to 95% of buyers typically are local buyers. And of those, I would say, in order of what I see happening, is mostly investors, only because end users tend not to be thinking 5 years ahead or 4 years ahead or whatever it is. So mostly condos get built because of investors. People want to make that out like it's a bad thing. That's the reason why we have rental housing, et cetera, in Toronto. It's exclusively because of the investors, in my opinion. The second group that I find is big is parents buying for their kids. So if you have, again, clients with kids who are going into university, say, look, they're going to be graduating about 3-4 years, you see which way the market's going, you can kind of put down, a lot of people put, and this is for the last, to get a line of credit on their house, a HELOC or something, put something down so the kids have a bit of a leg up and some equity. When they graduate, get a job, and are ready to do something for themselves, they kind of set them up that way. And the third one, which I'm starting to see more of, it has not been as big as we expected it to be. I think it's still coming, is empty nesters planning ahead and planning. Now, if you have clients who are thinking, look, we love our home, but we're starting to move in that direction. We're going to spend some time at the cottage or down south. We don't need this big house and look for a condo. The problem with a lot of empty nesters I found that I've worked with was when they want to sell and buy a condo, they're disappointed, and you guys may already know this, with how much condo you get for your money as opposed to a house. A lot of people, I think, used to think you'd be able to sell your house, buy a condo for a fraction of that and live off the proceeds. And really, it's not. For the type of condo that an empty nester usually is looking for, you're looking at, you know, well over $1 million usually. And if you're selling and buying to the same market, it eats up a lot of the equity of your home. So I have been trying to, I think it's people are they want to wait on it, but I do think it's an excellent option for people who are thinking they're going to want a condo, because it allows them to truly customize it, pick their colors, choose their exposures, et cetera, et cetera. They can take equity out of their home, so they don't have to feel it, but they basically now are walking in, they're going to be able to sell their house for a lot more than they would now, buy the condo for a lot less. And it, I think, just makes a lot of sense if people can plan ahead. So that's something that I haven't seen as much of, but I think we're going to be seeing more of it as people get older. Okay, so in terms of caveats in pre-construction, one of the things that we have as platinum agents is we, I guess, having been around it, we're pretty experienced and know what to look for. And how to warn or prepare clients for things like this. So one of the things that is people need to be aware of when you buy pre-construction, there are going to be a lot more closing fees associated with it than if you bought resale. You have HST, you're going to have all kinds of levies, you're going to have carry-on, et cetera, et cetera. We don't want these to take people by, in addition to the regular land transfer, et cetera, you'd be working with. So we want to make sure that going in, and there's always 10 days after you buy pre-construction where we go over the contract, we want to make sure people have a good idea as to what it's actually going to cost them to close the property. Delayed occupancy. So generally speaking, when you buy, they're going to give you an occupancy date. It's very seldom the date you're going to get it. It's going to be usually 6 months to a year. They'll give you the earliest possible occupancy date. So that will be for the first occupancy on the 3rd floor. If you bought the 52nd floor, obviously yours is going to be significantly past that. And on top of that, if there's any delays, like a massive pandemic or something like that, you know what, you're going to see that go even further. So you need to have some flexibility in terms of when you know you're going to actually get ownership. Here's a big one I find is big for empty nesters, that they can't see what they're buying. And it's very hard if you're not used to condominiums to imagine what 800 square foot feels like versus 1,000 versus 1,500. I find it's very helpful if I'm dealing with, again, empty nesters who are thinking that way, to do a few resale visits first to give them an idea of what it is, see if they're comfortable in that space. Because a floor plan doesn't do it for you. And very few builders are bothering to even make a scale model anymore, just because things sell so quickly, it doesn't make sense to invest the money. And here's a big one we've seen a lot in the news is project cancellations. Now I'm going to jinx, I don't want to say this out loud, but I haven't, I'm knocking right now. I haven't had any of my projects canceled. Part of that is what we said.
Don't say it.
I know, I shouldn't. But it goes back to what I said before. I tend to deal with the great gulfs and with the big builders. Projects cancel for a few reasons. A lot of people think it's just developer greed. I think that's very rarely the case. If you crash a project like that, it's a huge amount of negative press. Basically, projects cancel if they've sold before they've gotten their zoning completed and can't get their zoning. Or it's taken so long for them to get their zoning that is no longer feasible for them to construct at the price they sold it for. So they'd actually be operating at a loss. Or they can't get to financing. Those are the major reasons that projects don't go ahead. It's not something any builder wants to do. Like I say, they don't gain anything from it. A lot of people think, they say, look, we can sell it for $300 more a square foot. Let's just throw it in the wash. But they've invested a lot of money in getting it to that point. I don't think that's the case. That may be part of it, but generally speaking, it's just they literally cannot build it for the price it was sold at. They weren't solid enough to get it together in a reasonable amount of time, didn't have their zoning in play. These are things you want to ask the developer, like, where are you with zoning? You know, where are you with financing? When do you expect to build? You want to look at their track records. that's basically all you can do. And again, that still doesn't guarantee you won't have a project cancellation. I know Crestford just went to a massive receivership and they're a huge company. So you do have to be careful. And again, we try to explain that to our clients and try to select accordingly. Leverage. This is going, again, I can't go on about this enough because I don't think people get it quite easily enough. Typically, you're looking at 20% deposit. Now, sometimes we get as low as 10 or 15, but let's work on 20 because that's a typical case. It means for every dollar I'm sorry, reverse it, should be 1 to 5. For every dollar the condo goes up, you put down 20%, your return on investment is up 5. So, as an example here, so basically, if you bought a condo for $500,000, you're going to have to cough up $100,000 in the course of a year or two in 5% installments. Assuming it goes up 5% per year and I usually look at a 5-year window. It usually is a 4-year build on a high rise. And I usually count a 1 year. You don't want to sell it the first year because you don't get your HST back. And for $24,000, you want to rent it for a year. So you're looking at least 5 years before I ever suggest selling any of these things. But you're looking at 5% a year, which is actually extremely modest. We've seen anywhere from, average of 10, but I think 1 year was 30% in condos. It's been pretty crazy. But at 5% a year, which is just a little bit over inflation, that would have you around 638. It's 127% return on investment on what you've actually done. I've tried doing all kinds of investments. I actually built a hedge fund once. I've done all kinds of things. Nothing has treated me as well as real estate. And pre-construction, well, there's lots of different types of real estate you can do. And I'm a fan of lots of them. This is definitely the easiest. You put your checks in. You don't have to come with a mortgage for 5 years. You don't have to deal with tenants for 5 years. You don't have to be unplugging toilets or getting lawns mowed or dealing with construction. It really is just open and shut. So a lot of people want to have this at least as a portion of their investment portfolio. Like I said, it's done really well for me. I have clients who've literally made millions of dollars over the last 15 years. But yeah, it's been fantastic. And again, it's just if you know what you're doing and where you're investing, I think it's never going to go to zero the way other investments can. It's always going to be, if you're buying real estate in Toronto, you're always, I believe, assuming you've bought it intelligently, fairly safe. Now, going back to Condo Savvy, when I built it, the idea was to have one-stop shop type of thing where I could just kind of navigate the entire world of pre-construction for my clients from beginning to end. So we do a million things, but I tried to break it down into kind of what our main value adds would be. First is assessing the best opportunities. Like I said, I've never been about selling every project in the GTA. Sometimes, right now there's 6 of them being sold. I sold one of them, which was 28 Eastern. It was a fantastic project. Sold that last weekend. We're still in 10 days with everybody, but there's tons going on. I really try to look at the entire picture and saying, look, this is the one I put my money in, and I put that one out to my clients. First round VIP access. Again, the idea of wherever possible, we try to get in as early as possible before the prices go up. That's really when you make your money. If the difference is 30, 40 grand, that's 30, 40 grand out of your pocket. And you make your money. One of my things I tell clients all the time, you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. When you sell, we're going to sell it for market or as best we can, as you guys know. But you make your money by where you bought it. I've seen millions, many floor plans. I see a floor plan, it's like I'm walking through the room myself. There's a lot to take into account when you're picking floor plans. So first of all, and as resale agents, I'm not sure how often you guys work with them. So some may have a better grasp than others, but being able to understand, okay, this is where your light's coming from, this is what this feels like, this is too wide, this is too narrow. But more specifically in a condo, is it near the garbage chute? Is there going to be an obstruction? Do we have something zoned across the street that's going to block your view? There's a bunch of things we want to look at in the actual layout of the building to see where best we want to position. Or in a perfect world, if we can choose our unit, we want to be on the west side above the 6th floor, for example. What's going on here? won't let me do this anymore. Stop me. Oh, there you go. We provide for all of our clients full legal contract reviews. So when you purchase, you have 10 days, 10 calendar days before the first check is deposited. That's the time we don't like to put the people through until they're relatively certain this is what they want, but it is a big contract. We want to go through it in detail. We have a lawyer that we keep who specializes in this sort of thing. And we have it reviewed in full so they know exactly what their closing costs are going to be. If there's anything surprising in the contract, we try to get rid of it. But yeah, that's something you definitely would want to do. Also in that 10 days, as an aside, we have a lot of mortgage brokers that we work with, try to get financing in place, etc. And that ties into this access to our professional network. So because we deal with this all the time, we work with lenders, we work with accountants, we work with lawyers, etc., who kind of are very familiar in this zone that can help your clients get from purchase to closing without a lot of drama, capping rates, etc. Design and upgrade advisements. We'd like to go with all of our clients wherever possible to their design meeting with the builder. We want to make sure, again, going forward, that the colors, etc., they've chosen are what's most desirable and most marketable, and also which upgrades will actually get you money and which ones are wasting your money. Sorry about that. So some upgrades that are always worth it is a barbecue gas line. If you can get one of those, buy it. A clear view. Again, that's decided earlier on. Some things aren't worth it. Sometimes you can upgrade them. Something like a gas stove. It's nice, but it's not necessarily going to get you more rent. But if you want one for yourself, that's a different type of thing. So from an investment, there's certain ones where they're just better bang for your buck. PDI, for instance, that's pre-delivery inspection. So before your clients actually get keys to their units, now we're talking, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, there's something called a pre-delivery inspection. We like to go with them, and it's your chance to walk through the unit to make sure everything was presented as you purchased it. It's your client's first chance to see the unit, which is always very exciting. And we like to go there to be a second set of eyes to make sure they haven't missed anything, because once they actually get keys, it could be considered their damage as opposed to something that was not done properly. And there's different phases of carry on, et cetera, for that sort of thing. But we also want to make sure we're with them for that first visit, just to make sure nothing gets missed. With our clients, we also like to do annual strategy reviews. So we want to look over, we have quite a few clients now who have portfolios, and we want to look at their units every year and decide, what do we keep? What do we rent? Which one's performing well? Which one do we see think is, has had a huge run up? Do we want to potentially remortgage some of them to put into a new investment, etc.? So as clients build up a portfolio, we'd like to work with them through that. Also, we have, which you guys can do as well, but we do a lot of rental assignment and resale. So we try to avoid assignment unless it's the worst case scenario, because they lose so much of their equity by doing that. But that is a service that we do offer down the road as well. So we try to make it so we are with people right from the beginning of picking the project right through to the end, and make sure everybody makes as much money as they can. That's all the things that I thought of. I talked a lot. I feel like I need some water, but yeah, that's kind of, there's a million things I could tell you about, but I thought at this point I would just kind of open it up and see if you guys had any questions. We have questions here? Let's see.
No, I think the one that
you can text them or unmute yourself. There was one earlier about commission related.
Yes.
And so let me just read it 1 second. I wasn't sure if I fully understood it.
I'm looking at 2 different.
What do you think of platinum agents who offer to get you in but charge you 1 to 2% commission payable to them?
Well, that's basically what it is. So what happens as a platinum agent, they'll give me 5 units, for example, right? You're gonna basically, so that's, even if I, as a platinum agent, want a unit and I've sold my 5 and I need to get a unit from another platinum agent, they essentially sell it to me. And the rate is 1 or 2%, depending on what it is and who you're dealing with, etc. That's basically the business.
Are there projects right now, Milan, that you really think are great, that you have platinum access to? Because I have an investor client who's like, bring me something good. I just sold one of her condos. So I'd be interested in possibly partnering up with you. Just
Absolutely. We just did one this weekend. I think it sold out. It was called 28 Eastern, which was fantastic. It was the first major launch of Toronto, of downtown Toronto, and we were all waiting with bated breath to see how the post-COVID market would be. It's amazing. There was a lot of pent-up demand. Right now, there's a few other ones, but nothing I'm super excited about. What I do is I may go dormant for a while until I wait for something exciting to come on my desk. And then it's a matter of saying, okay, this one's good. And one of the things that makes it difficult for us, that wasn't like before, is they will tell us about the project 2 weeks in advance, but they'll wait until the 11th hour before they give us specifics, i.e. pricing, deposit structure, et cetera, et cetera. So I know about a lot of stuff coming in, but I don't get excited until I have all the facts in front of me.
What's a decent cap on developer fees? Like development fees right now? Like I just was involved in an assignment back in December, and I think like it was like capped at 12,500. Like, does that sound good to you or?
Good. What was the size of the unit?
It was a 2-story townhouse.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be. 1 bedrooms, I think on this last one, capped out at around $11,000 for a tiny little 1-bedroom apartment. And again, that's not the developer, that's 100% the city. They're just passing on. They doubled them again sometime last year. They've doubled them several times since I started in this. They just see money and they can take and they go after it. So we cap into it, can't go beyond that certain amount, but 12.5 is pretty much for a large unit, absolutely.
Do you do a lot of assignments as well?
I don't. In terms of my clients listing them, I find what happens with an assignment is you get taxed through the nose. So if you put down 20%, you're going to get paid 13% on the profit as well as the 20% you've put down. And then they're going to try to come after you, not for capital gains, but again, they try to come after you for income because it was never capital and you never owned it. So I find it just erodes your profits so quickly. It doesn't make sense. So I do it if you have to. And in terms of purchasing assignments, that's a little bit more interesting. It's I'm not sure you've done one. It's a relatively complicated deal, as you know. It does open, you want to make sure your buyer's really well protected for taxes going forward. In other words, to make sure that that HST, for example, has been paid by somebody. So if your client's an end user, but the person who sold to them didn't pay HST, that could come back on your client 3 years down the road. So it's a little bit messy, but if you can get a good deal in today's market, absolutely, I'd go for it. And that's another thing within the platinum brokers, we have them floating around all the time because we can't put them on MLS, so we kind of just float them around amongst each other.
Yeah, I'm in a bunch of the groups. Do you have, and this is the last question because I know I'm being a hog and then I'll stop. But do you have a lawyer that you like for assignments and pre-construction that's really good at vetting these sorts of agreements? And
yeah, I use Jonathan Hacohen. He's my kind of go-to lawyer, but Mitch Corman's great. There's been a few of them that I've worked with that as long as they, the worst thing, you get a guy and you sit down and you get that old lawyer who's never really seen a client, who's never seen a condo deal, and they're trying to make issues that are about things that are just the way it is. But yeah, I think as long as your lawyer, I have a few of them, as long as they have been working with pre-con and relatively regularly, they should be okay.
Feldkalia.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're good.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I have a question. Sorry, can you hear me? Because they're doing construction here, 2 floors above, and it's driving me crazy.
That's okay.
All good, Lisa.
Okay. The 28 Eastern, you said that it's just about all sold out. I have a client that is looking for a 1-bedroom plus den, 2-bathroom. There's one particular model, she liked the B239, I think it was. Do you have any more of those, or any 1-bedroom plus den with 2 bathrooms?
Nobody. All of our allocations were, and everybody signed over the weekend.
Okay.
The only thing that will happen now is if somebody falls out within their 10 days.
Can I follow up with you in 10 days, or send you a quick note?
Follow up with me now. And I know some people on the inside. So if you let me know what it is you're looking for, I can see if I can we can kind of skip the line a little bit and see if we, again, no promises, but if something falls through,
okay.
I can see if they can help us out.
And the other one, the Empire Key House.
Yes.
Is that one available yet, the floor plans and pricing?
Not yet. Not yet. It's
Okay.
coming soon though.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Lisa. Milan, I'll type it into the chat. Can you give me the lawyer's first name that you suggested? Jonathan somebody?
Absolutely. Jonathan Hacohen. While you'll type it in for you.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. No, he's kind of my go-to as our brokerage lawyer. He's been awesome. He does my own personal stuff as well. Yeah. Awesome.
Great. And as a follow-up, I'll also, well, you've got Milan's info here, but I can also connect you guys with her as well.
Absolutely. Like, guys, we do this stuff, and again, I'm always happy to help. So if you have questions that pop into your head after, you can text me, give me a call, email. Text or calling is better. I have so many emails to deal with. It's hardly better you just call me. But yeah, always happy to help. There's a lot of projects. I'm honest to a fault when it comes down to projects. Like I said, I don't go to everyone. Some of them are excellent, but the prices I just don't think warrant what they're selling. So again, I'll tell my clients, this is great. I don't know if you're buying it as an investment. I don't know if you want to live here. That's a completely different situation. But to find good value downtown right now is getting really, really difficult.
And I know every project is, I have a question. I know every project is going to be different based on amenities, location, that kind of stuff. But do you have benchmarks of cost per square foot that you follow loosely?
Absolutely. Well, they change awfully quickly these days. It's so funny. I remember I did a project in 2000, when was it? Maybe in 2016, 17 or something. And I remember it was the last one. It was a Great Gulf project, and it was at 6 something per square foot. And I remember telling guys, like, guys, I just think it's the last time we're going to see something south of 7. And it went from 7, 8, 9 to 1,000 within like a year. So when we did Nobu, that was 1,000 a square foot. And we're like, oh my goodness, it's 1,000 a square foot at Nobu. And I mean, one that traded next to Nobu earlier this year, 55 Mercer, which is just down the street, was at 1,600 a square foot. So as a rule of thumb, you're not going to see anything downtown anymore, likely under $1,000 a square foot. To be honest, 11, 12 is kind of as low as it's going to get because cost of construction, land, everything have gone up so high. It's gone to the point now where we're looking at projects. Last year I had a great project out in Calgary because it was only 5% down, and they gave you, I think, a 2-year rental guarantee, et cetera, et cetera. There's some really interesting opportunities. So I've looked outside of downtown Toronto, and we've expanded to places that are going to be on a subway line. Oakville's popped up some good things. Like I said, I had a project in Calgary last year that was really, really, really good. So now I'm kind of going all over the place looking for value. Hard to find though. It really is getting expensive.
Yeah, good. Thank you for your time. Does anyone have any last questions? I think you covered a lot. It was a great flow of understanding needs and pitfalls and all that kind of stuff. So
thank you.
Probably not as many questions.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Good. No, I think we're good.
Question.
I think we're good. Is there any one last parting thing that you'd like to share with us?
You know what? I think I said everything I had to say. Like I said, if you guys have questions on pre-con, I'm always happy to help. I've been doing it for a really long time. I know most of the key players. And like I said, if you have people who have been thinking about it, I'm happy. Like I said, if you want to refer them out, basically we've been working with some other agents recently saying if we refer them out, we pay a point and we kind of take it over from there. They still remain your client and we'll just help them with the stuff that, we specialize in.
Mm-hmm. Fabulous. Well, I was kind of stalling a little bit to see if there was any other questions in the chat box, but looks like you did a great job covering everything. So I do appreciate your time. We've come in under the hour, which is fabulous. And I think you will get some reach outs from the group. So thank you for that.
Always happy to help.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.